Welcome back, MTG Joe here. We're here for another weekly installment of the top decks in Historic, weekly meta breakdown. We do these for Standard and occasionally for Alchemy. We do these each week. Standard's already up. We're doing Historic a little bit later this week, in part because there was a recent Alchemy drop that came out last week. Historic being a live format means Alchemy released cards do come into the Historic format. So it's a quick snapshot. Today's going to be just best of one. We normally do best of one and best of three. However, Untapped, where we're getting the data from, hasn't accrued enough volume of games yet in unique decks to aggregate a large enough sum of the games. So doing kind of an impromptu this week to get something out there. And then we'll be back next week. As always, we're getting our data from Untapped GG. It's a companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks your win rates, looks at your collection, and suggests decks you can build, and then contributes to an overall win rate matrix. So if you do want to get started, it's free to use to get started. It has like the in-game kind of deck tracking and stuff like that. It'll say like how likely you are to draw cards and stuff like that. You'll see it in the games that we play on the channel as well. The link is in the video description. As always, I'll post the deck list we're looking at today as an importable link in the video description as well. Sorry, my dog is very adamant right now to just say hello. So she's being a little bit of a drama queen. So we'll get started. We're Historic. We're looking March 17th to 23rd. As always, we're looking at Platinum to Mythic rank, 45,000 games played. And the top performing deck of the week is Azorius Control. The No Fun Police is out in full force. Nearly a 69% win rate at 6.9 minutes. It's just, all things are coming out nice. And this deck just keeps getting good cards. In the latest set, we're seeing March of the Otherworldly Light. So a big thing with this deck, like Blue-White Control in the past, was it lacked the targeted removal. That's why you saw a lot of these decks go Jeskai, to have something like Lightning Helix or Unholy Heat in the deck. Now you have March of the Otherworldly Light, which is a scalable removal spell that hits not only creatures, but artifacts and enchantments as well. So even something like Roiling Vortex, which typically is a card against blue-white that you get down and then they're kind of stuck dealing with, now they have an easy way to answer that. Paired that with like Fateful Absence, they have a hard removal spell for Planeswalkers as well. So they got kind of the direct removal. They also are adding in the Wandering Emperor into the list. A flash threat, removes, slices, dices. This card does so much for 4 mana. So they're doing a Planeswalker split, Narset, Wandering Emperor, and the big boy himself, Teferi, hero of Dominaria, slowing things down. And then they're doing a Sweeper Suite. So this is generally when you look at Control, you want to see, okay, so what is their targeted removal suite? What's their Sweeper Suite? And what's kind of their win-con card advantage suite? So they're using Divine Purge, 3 mana Sweeper, kind of a tempo play. They're using 1 Wrath of God as well as 1 Farewell, which is just a flexible removal. Then just kind of wrapping up the deck, you have counters in Censor, which can be cycled, Veto, hard counter, Archmage Charm, just a very flexible card, counter, draw, or gain control. And then a copy of Commit to Memory, which is kind of a counter spell in a way. And then they have some copies of Deluge for card advantage, Shark Typhoon, blocker, attacker, or just, you know, the hard cast shark win con kind of mixed in. And because best of one, you got to have some graveyard hate in the main board. So a Soul Guide Lantern, relatively low cost to play this card. Very worst case, you just cycle it and you get your value there. Mana base as well, we're seeing you got the Irrigated Farmlands to cycle. This is the benefit of going blue-white. You can play a lot more utility lands. You have the Vantress for Scries, Ardenvale as a win condition, Eiganjo and Otawara just as utility lands with Hall of Storm Giant mixed in. So that's Azorius Control. Mono red, we've seen some variations. So the core of the deck is usually Reckless Ringleader. So this one's at 62%. To give things haste, you have a 2-drop package of BTE, Kari, Zev, and Robber. Some versions are on Annex, some aren't. Some are on Chain Whirler, some are not. Some have Roiling Vortex in the deck. Some have Ferocidon in the deck. I generally like those to deal with all the life gain decks. This version's on Torbran and Cleave, so kind of an ode to the older version. With Torbran out, if you do Chain Whirler, it deals 3 damage to each creature, so kind of a cool way there. So you have this version here, and then you have this version here, slightly updated. So you'll see in this version here, no Embercleave, no Annex, but you have the Ferocidons and the Roiling Vortex, as well as a new card here, Kumana Faces Coxswain. So this card here, every mode's relevant. You ping something for 1. You can get like a 3/3 Robber of Rich, or just kind of buff up your creatures from the next saga, and then you get a 2/2. In other decks, so not necessarily this, but in like Dragon Rage Chandler decks, I've been playing this in Burn. It adds an enchantment subtype and a creature as 1 card, so it's really good with DRC, Dragon Rage Chandler, to get Delirium going. And then this version here is on 4-Den for Ramunap Ruins in it as well. So if you like to go quick, both these decks are very aggressively slanted decks with about 4-minute runtime for your games. Next up is Azorius Auras. So we've seen this list. Really the innovation of these lists are the Light Pause, which lets you tutor for specific spells, lets you be a little bit more toolboxy. But the core of the deck is get a creature, slap down a bunch of auras, draw a bunch of cards. So of course Spirit Dancer and SRAM both let you draw a bunch of cards. You have tax effects with like Esper Sentinel, and then protection with Savior, as well as Karametra's Blessing. And then your auras give you utility stuff like flying, unblockable, big buffs, vigilance, and lifelink and card draw kind of mixed in there. I always find with auras is very powerful, and if you're not ready for it, it just beats up on certain matchups. But I've found playing auras a lot in the past, you lose to yourself equally as much as that, just because you can draw hands where you just don't do much, and if you don't have one of these enablers, you just have auras with nowhere to stick them on. Mono Green Elves. So kind of a demo of Untapped here really quick. I don't own cards for Elves. I play a lot of decks on this channel. I don't have the cards for Elves. And if I want to build this deck, it lets me know I need 3 mythics here, 2 rares, 4 rares, just a bunch of cards. So I need 7 rares, 4 mythics to play this deck. But with the deck, really what you're trying to do is generate a lot of mana. You have your lords to kind of go wide. You generate a bunch of mana, you pump it into either Elvish War Master, Allosaurus Shepherd to make your things really big, or you just hit a Craterhoof Behemoth and smack face on your opponent that way there. So this deck usually hits very hard and can kind of just have like super crazy nut draws, especially with Freyleys to tap and untap stuff. The one thing I don't like about Elves, and sometimes these aggressive decks, they're kind of, if you get swept, you just lose. There's not a lot of build up or card advantage, especially with this deck here. It's a critical mass deck. You want to play to the board more. So if we saw like Azorius Control being the top deck right now, it just kind of plows through something like this with sweepers. Up next, we have Boros Burn, and I've actually been playing Rectus Burn, and it's been really fun and like high mythic. I'll show that deck list in a sec, but kind of similar idea. This version here is on a wizard package, so you have Soulscar Mage, Lavamancer, and Viashino Pyromancer. That enables the Wizard's Lightning. You have cards like Electrostatic Blast, which provide card advantage in a way. You have Static Discharge. This version's on Roiling Vortex. And then really the white is for Lightning Helix as well as Luris. I'll show you my list that I've been playing in a sec. We have Mono Blue Affinity. So we've seen variations of this Affinity style list. It's basically Thought Monitor, Nettlecyst style deck. This version's looking to use Reality Chips for card advantage. You have Emery to cast cards from your spells from your graveyard. Mox Amber. You have Psy to generate a bunch of tokens. So it's kind of play a bunch of cheap stuff, chain through your deck, get a lot of value that way there. There's also like blue-white versions that also look to play Karn, the Scion of Urza, to make big Karnstructs, as we call them. One thing you'll notice with this deck is they're playing a bunch of pathways and only one island. The reason for this is against a deck like Merfolk that have Island Walk. While it doesn't come off that often, this is pretty much free to play these spells, these lands. So it just kind of edge cases, you kind of play around it. In any case, if I play this deck against Merfolk, I know I'm going to get my one island in my opener, of course. And then lastly, we have Rectus Arcanists. Generally speaking, there's kind of 2 builds of this. This is the Luris-less, no Luris version. And the big payoffs of going no Lurrus is you get Seasoned Pyromancer. Really useful card here, refills your hand. You're usually 1-for-1ing with a lot of discard. Or late game, you draw some discard and your opponent's empty-handed. You can just chuck those to the Pyromancer and get some tokens, or it just refills your hand. You also get access to Chandra and Soaring. Soaring's actually low-key really good in this deck. You don't have ways to gain life typically, and if you're thought seizing yourself a lot, you take a lot of incidental self-damage here. So this is a way to kind of gain back some life and accrue some card advantage. So kind of playing with that. You have Dreadhorde Arcanist to flash back your spells. Kroxa, it's kind of your big payoff. This version here is not all in graveyard either, so you're not as kind of completely shit out of luck, let's say, if they play Rest in Peace or something like that. There's no DRCs, there's no Stitcher Supplier, so you're not really Turbo Kroxa in this deck. It's more of like an attrition-based matchup. Lastly, so if we go to my page, so you can see it tracks all my win rates for the month. For the month, I'm 62% win rate. I've peaked at 253 Mythic. Gives me a breakdown of how I'm doing in certain matchups. And the deck that so the card I've really liked out of the Alchemy drop for Historic is Painful Bond. 2 mana, draw 2 cards, and then he kind of puts attacks. So I've been playing it in this Burn Shell with Rakdos. And really Rakdos, we're going for this Painful Bond. It's a cheap card to refill our hand for burn. And then I'm playing Kolaghan's Command also to rebuy our spells. I'm playing a creature package, and this is a best of 3 deck. I'll post the full list. I played one game of best of 1 here. Let's see if we go. If I do this, we'll pull up the full sideboard. There we go. So I made one switch. So I put the Kolaghan's Command in the main board. I was playing 2 Skewer the Critics main, but I like K-Command better. And really what you're trying to do, you have Dragon Rage Chandler for evasion, Soulscar Mage is a way to kind of shrink things. And then my other creature is Bloodthirsty Adversary. I've really, really, really liked this card. Just being able to flash back stuff. Worst case, it's a haster. Plays even nice if you go Kumana on 1, this on 2, 3/3 haster is pretty good value overall. But flashing back your spells, you have 8 ways to draw cards in Electrostatic Blast and Painful Bond, which then you can flash back. You have Static Discharge, which can scale. You have Lurrus to buy back your stuff. So this is a best of 3 list, so I don't have the Roiling Vortex main. If you do want to play this in best of 1, I'd say cut the 2 Bomat Couriers, and probably honestly the Kumanas, and just play for Roiling Vortex main. That's probably the concession I would make, and then switch these to K-Commands. I'll import the list if you want to play it. This is my sideboard as well. Played it in best of 3 as well. Really liked what we were doing. It's not pulling in the full one. I'll import the full sideboard as well. You can take a look at that if you want. But yeah, I was playing that. I tried a black-white version with Painful Bond. It didn't do that well. Kaido Rogues is another list I played. I really like this one as well, best of 3, but really just like a Rogues list. No Lurrus in this one because we're playing Kaido. You have Graveyard Hate with like Trespasser, playing some Borrowers, also as tempo plays, but just a cheap way to refill your hand. Kaido gives you value that way too, and then just kind of a mix of removal as well as like counter spells in the post-board games. I didn't go too heavy on counter spells. Really, you have your Disputes and then your main board Drown and Lock, so 7 counter spells for the control matchups. But it's really just trying to play a tempo flash game. If you like Rogues, something to check out as well. But that's it for the week. Let me know what you think. We'll be back next week with more. And as always, if you can, drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.